I'd love to give you you can tell you they're all the same. But no, you're the head coach and you're ranked. It's certainly something we're proud of, but not satisfied with. But I look at it more as it's just the next step, and credit the players and the people in this program. 2 years ago at this time, a 2-win team that being ranked in the top 25 was the furthest thing from anybody's mind, to now, less than 2 years later, to be ranked in the top 25, to me is just a sign that and another statement that we're headed in the right direction, and a credit.
All right, that's Shane Beamer at the Tuesday press conference this week following South Carolina's first ranking, top 25 ranking of the Shane Beamer era, and first time being ranked since 2018. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. So coming off their first 4-game winning streak since 2013, lots of firsts happening this season. Broke the streak against Texas A&M, first win over them. Anyway, this is the GamecocksScoop.com podcast. I'm Caleb Alexander. I almost forgot my name. Wow. Joined by Alan Cole. And it's been one of those days. Anyway.
We're off to a rolling start here.
Yeah, it's going great. We're going to preview the Missouri matchup this weekend. It's a homecoming matchup between South Carolina and the Missouri Tigers. It's a little scary, I think. I think most people that have been following South Carolina for a little while are used to following up success with falling on their face. So there's a little bit of that anxiety there. South Carolina is favored, although the line has moved a little bit, and we'll talk about all that. But as always, let's get started with a little bit of recruiting talk. Tomorrow morning, I'll have my weekly recruiting wrap up, or tomorrow sometime. It kind of moves around on Fridays, but it's posted on Fridays on GamecockScoop.com, and that'll have the whole full visitors list, at least as of Friday, for Missouri. A couple other news and notes from a recruiting front, but I did want to talk about last week's visitors, especially the 2023 visitors. Although, go back and look at my visitors lists on the weekly recruiting wrap up last week, because the 2024 class list of visitors was insane. Like one of the best collections of talent that I can think of that's all been on campus at the same time. So, if South Carolina can continue to make inroads with that list of 2024 guys over the next year, look out. And we've really been targeting that class as maybe the big class that steps forward, although this one's not quite done. So you still have 5-star Nicholas Harbor out there, which nothing really new to report there. Still feel pretty good about where South Carolina is sitting. He's set to visit LSU in December, and then probably we'll hear a little bit more on what's next from there. But last weekend, you had two visit the possible flip candidates. So you had Terrence Love out of Auburn. He's a 4-star DB. Actually sat down and talked to him on Monday or Tuesday. That's on GamecockScoop.com. You can go check that out. Had some interesting things to say. Currently, it sounds like he's still pretty committed to Auburn, and obviously the Brian Harsin era may be coming to an end sooner than later at Auburn. So really, when I sat down to talk to him, I was curious just how much of an impact that's going to make if he were to get fired. It sounds like just because Harsin gets fired, that doesn't necessarily mean Love's automatically going to jump ship. But I would currently classify South Carolina as like the top backup option. And we'll kind of have to see what moves Auburn makes as far as their next coach in line, how quickly he can kind of warm up to some of those guys like Love and other people that may potentially start looking around. But South Carolina's put themselves in good position if Love doesn't like what he sees from whatever's next. And that's kind of what he told me, was like he's not committed to Auburn, but he wants to be pragmatic about it and have backup options if necessary, which I think, I respect that. I would probably tell my, teenage son to do the same thing. Another big Potential flip candidate was Khalifa Keith, running back. He is committed to Kentucky right now. He was on campus. Haven't heard a ton out of him yet. I'm still trying to track him down. But that's kind of an intriguing one. He could potentially be like a Thunder to Dontavius Braswell's Lightning, so to speak. He's a little bit more of a bruiser, whereas Braswell is a speedy guy out of Georgia. So we'll keep that in mind. And then the other big news that a lot of South Carolina fans have been waiting on was what South Carolina is planning to do with the 2023 quarterback class. So after Dylan Lonergan committed to Alabama, South Carolina led in that one for a really long time. There was some rumbling about maybe Reno, who was in the 2024 class, reclassifying. That seems to have mostly gone by the wayside at this point, although we'll let you know if anything changes there. And yeah, they really didn't have any other offers out there. And a lot of people in state were like, well, there's this guy down in South Florence, Lenora Sellers, who's committed to Syracuse. And, you know, he's visited campus regardless of being committed to Syracuse several times. Like, what's going on with him? He's kind of a dual threat guy. Really, his stock has risen a lot lately around the country. I know that like Georgia is sniffing around a little bit, North Carolina, and then he already had 6 or 7 offers before that. Anyway, South Carolina finally pulled the trigger this past week on offering Lenora Sellers, and I broke down with Adam Friedman from Rivals National on whether or not he's ultimately going to flip from Syracuse to South Carolina. And I said fact, but it was like the loosest fact ever. I'm forced into saying either fact or fiction, and I didn't want to say fiction because there are a lot of things working in South Carolina's favor. But it is possible, maybe bordering on probable, that South Carolina waited a little bit too long here. I'm kind of surprised they waited as long as they did, honestly. So we'll have to see. I mean, Syracuse is obviously, he's been committed there since March. Syracuse has obviously made it apparent that he is their number one priority. And South Carolina kind of dragged their feet on making him their number one priority. So it depends on how much ground the staff can make up and how much staying in state matters to him. So that'll be an interesting one to watch. But I don't have a good feel one way or the other yet. I do know that he was set to take a visit to Syracuse this coming weekend that he's not taking. Haven't been able to confirm if that means he's coming to South Carolina for the Missouri game. I'll try to let you know by tomorrow on that. But yeah, interesting one to watch. And the last recruiting note is on the basketball side. Cam Scott was on campus for an official visit. From everything that I've been able to hear, I talked to him a little bit right after. Everything went really well. And then Allen, which we're going to talk a little bit more about this in a minute, went to the Garnet and Black basketball event yesterday and confirmed that Cam Scott was actually on campus for that too, which short drive from Lexington. So even though he took his official visit this past weekend, I would expect probably see him around campus a lot more throughout the basketball season anytime they can get him in. So we'll keep you posted on that one. That one's a huge recruit, 5-star in-state guy, and can go pretty much anywhere that he wants. I would say Duke might be the biggest threat at the moment.
Oh, just Duke, whatever.
Just Duke. That's all. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But South Carolina's in good position, and it definitely helps. Like I said, that you can get them on campus for a Tuesday or Wednesday night Garnet and Black event too. So all right, that's all I got for recruiting right now. Again, check out the weekly recruiting wrap up tomorrow, and I'll have lots more, including the visitors list for Missouri. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more fun recruits on campus for homecoming. Should be another great environment. So
another sellout. They've still sold out every game this year except the Hurricane move one.
Yeah, so 5 out of 6 sellouts, and perhaps that one would have been, that was SC State.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, let's get into this matchup with Missouri. So we've already had a ton of stuff on GamecocksCoop.com starting to break down the game. yesterday I went on the PowerMizzou.com podcast and talked with those guys a little bit about the game, and then had one of their staff writers kind of give their perspective on the game, which I posted on GamecocksScoop.com this morning. And basically, it seems like we've said this for the past 3 weeks, but these two teams are sort of mirrors of each other in a lot of ways. Have struggled a bit on offense, played pretty well on defense, and Missouri seems to be in this trend, other than getting blown out by Kansas State, where they just keep it close. They ugly up games. They haven't won very many games, but they've been kind of sneaking around right there in several. Of course, they had the heartbreaking loss to Auburn, had a near loss to Vanderbilt last week, but they got a big win. Kind of threw away a game, a big game that they could have won against Georgia, which of course would have completely changed the narrative here. So yeah, what's your initial feels on this one, Alan?
Yeah, I think you hit the term ugly right on the head. This is going to get ugly. If you read my preview on the website tomorrow or Saturday morning, I kind of wrote a little bit about that too. Missouri likes dragging opponents into the mud. They're going to slow the pace down. They're going to make you dink and dunk. I know they gave up an 80-yard touchdown on a screen last week, but other than that, they really are not giving up a ton of explosive plays this year. That was very much an outlier play against Vanderbilt. Defense is good situationally, which I think is important. They're great in the red zone. They've forced, I think, 11 field goal attempts already in the red zone was a number I came up with, a number I saw earlier this week. It's in the article, whatever the final number is. They're really good on third downs. They're 9th in the country and 2nd in the SEC, I think only behind Georgia in third down defense. This is going to be a difficult matchup, especially defensively for South Carolina's offense. And I think the term trap game is the one I've seen thrown around, and it definitely is a trap game.
Yeah, and you hope some of that's mitigated by being in front of a sellout crowd at home. Can kind of smooth over some of those rough edges. But yeah, I think this is going to be a low-scoring, ugly game. Missouri also has some talent on special teams. I believe their lead kick returner is averaging even more yards than Josh Van or Xavier.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Luther Burton does the punts, I think. That's the 5-star recruit out of St. Louis. He was the number 1 rated receiver in last year's class, decided to stay home, and he's actually not their leading receiver right now. We can get into that too. But he's still a big part of that offense and on special teams too.
Yeah, the thing I was struck by while I was talking to the guys over at Power Mizzou was they're having some similar frustrations where they feel like they should be performing better on offense than they are as far as the talent on the field. One thing that's notable, though, is they don't have the running back talent that South Carolina has kind of been plagued by the past few years. Tyler Beatty ran all over South Carolina last year. They've really been struggling on the offensive line. They had several transfers after last year. So an offensive line that sort of bullied South Carolina's defensive line at times is not nearly as good. And I think it's been obvious to see that South Carolina's defensive line has taken a step forward this year. So that'll be an interesting thing to watch in this one too.
Yeah, and we've kind of heard that from some guys this week about Zach Pickens' leadership. And last week, although they weren't getting sacks, they ended up with 6 against Kentucky, none against A&M. They had a lot of pressure last week. I think Clayton White used the term, we remember how the quarterbacks feel at the end of the game, or we remember how they feel when they're walking off. And he mentioned that, Connor Wegman, or I guess Haynes King, got hurt, and Connor Wegman too. They weren't feeling good when they were walking off the field last week. They had guys in their face all night. Obviously, that ended up winning the game for South Carolina. Bam Martin Scott on the last play got some pressure on that Hail Mary attempt. It's kind of the same deal. Of course, you'd like to finish sacks. You'd like to turn the pressure rate into sacks, I guess. But this is not a Missouri offense that's super equipped, A, to play from behind. I know we said that last week about A&M, but it was true. Or B, to get behind the chains as much. So yeah, a sack or two here could be crucial. And I do think they might be due maybe for a couple. Like last week was regression back to the mean. They might be due again.
Yeah, I mean, they had I don't remember the exact number, but they had an insane amount of pressures. I want to say it was almost like 30 something if you count like hurries and hits on the quarterback and all this stuff combined, which is wild. So I think sacks are a little bit overrated. It was obvious that the defensive front and the pass rush affected that game throughout it, even though they didn't in the box score have the actual sacks. I did just see we had a comment on YouTube from Tyganda Gilmore. Thanks for commenting. It says South Carolina's got to go pass heavy against Missouri. That's something that we've kind of been talking about in the group chat throughout the week as well, is like, what is the strategy here? Because it actually does seem like there could be some truth to that, but South Carolina's best offensive showings have been when they've just sort of leaned on the run game and let that set up the pass. And you would think that that would be the strategy in general if you're just trying to like find your identity, which is something we talked about a lot earlier in the season, and then just like impose that identity regardless of the opponent. But if you're looking at the matchups, it is possible that this is more of a Spencer Rattler game. The last two games, something that we've talked about is the secondaries not play as much man-to-man, whereas Missouri will blitz and play some man-to-man, so you could get some one-on-one matchups, and it'll be interesting to see if they do try to exploit that, if they try to impose the run, which has been successful through the last few weeks.
I guess my question with that, we appreciate the comment. We do. What does a passing game look like for South Carolina at this point? I mean, we've seen, I don't know, go back to the Charlotte game, I guess 4 games in a row now. Yeah. Running is the identity. The offense is tilted towards running. I wrote a little bit about red zone running this week in my stats piece. They ran the ball on 13 out of 15 plays in the red zone, which is a crazy split, really, when you think about it. Is that deep balls? Is that kind of like the intermediate sideline stuff we've seen Spencer Rattler do pretty well? Is that maybe getting Josh Vann on some more crossers? I know that he got one of those on a big third down last week. What does a game where Spencer Rattler throws the ball 30 times even look like at this point? I'm not really sure.
Well, and even though you will get some one-on-one situations in this one, I think the folks over at Power Mizzou at least were saying that the secondary was a strong point of Missouri's defense, which I haven't like watched enough Missouri film to verify that one way or another, but I'm trusting those guys. They seem like they know what they're talking about. So yeah, I mean, it is interesting. I don't know that I think it would have to be downfield passing because you want to take advantage of those one-on-one matchups with your best guy, say Antoine Wells or Jaheim Bell or whatever, just beating his man. I don't know that you are going to get it done just dinking and dunking. Although, we've seen some success in the screen game.
I think you're going to have to, though. Missouri's kept the lid on the big plays most of the year. I've got all the numbers in my piece going on the website later in the week. But again, really, they're not giving up a lot of pass plays that are beyond about, 30, 40 yards, other than it was a screen pass that they missed some tackles and busted against Vanderbilt last week. But they don't allow a lot of that. I think it's kind of more the intermediate stuff they're going to have to make work this week. If you're South Carolina, and I don't know what that exactly means for Marcus Satterfield, but I'm interested to find out.
And how do you feel about Marshawn Lloyd's chances against this run defense? I mean, they've been pretty solid in the run D.
I kind of think we're getting to the point with Marshawn Lloyd where we're close to he's going to get his yards no matter what territory. All the stuff we said about Chris Rodriguez and Definite Chain the last 2 weeks. I think you can almost say that about Lloyd, the way he's playing. But I kind of say the same thing. I don't expect pops. I don't expect explosive plays in the running game really against this Missouri defense. I think it's going to have to be an efficient running game, more a down-to-down thing. And that it kind of goes against what we're talking about, but that might mean being stubborn with it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're thinking of Missouri of the last 2 years or whatever, just throw that out because they're definitely the most improved team in the SEC on defense, I would say. And like you said, they're going to make you earn it. And outside of that big fourth quarter drive against Texas A&M and a big field goal drive against Kentucky, both of those were 8+ plays. South Carolina has not proven to consistently be able to move it down the field. They've gotten some big plays in special teams. They've gotten some turnovers on defense that given them short fields. But when they actually have to drive the length of the field, they've really struggled with that. So naturally, if that trend continues, I think we're looking at a low-scoring game, because I don't think Missouri's offense matches up very well against South Carolina's defense either.
Yeah, before we get to that, just one other stat thing. This is in the article, but I'm going to pull it up now. You look at the Georgia game, which I think most people would say was probably Missouri's best performance of the year, even in a loss. They were leading Georgia for 56 minutes of that game. They lost 26-22. Georgia had 6 scoring drives, 2 touchdowns, 4 field goals. Those were 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, and 16 plays. And for the year, Missouri's at 7.5 plays a scoring drive allowed. Basically, on average, if you're going to score Missouri's defense, it's going to take about 7.5 plays. Like I said, they don't give up the explosive play. This is going to have to be a patient game for Marcus Satterfield, I think. And I understand that scares South Carolina fans, and it kind of should. But this is not going to be a quick strike offense game. It just won't be.
Yeah. I also think you have to clean up the mistakes. So as much as we've been sort of praising the special teams, and it's very easy to overlook some of these things when you get a win against a team you've never beaten before. Everyone's super elated, and one of the key points of that win was a special teams play to start the game. But they've also been a little shaky lately. I don't know what's going on with the PAT team, but they've had 2 blocked throughout the year so far, and including a big one last week that really could have been very bad had
it was Tonka Hemingway. That was
Hemingway. Yeah, not made that
Yep.
stop, because then you're looking at a 1 possession game there. But so you got to clean up those mistakes, even though the special teams has been a difference maker in the positive direction as well. And then on offense, it's gotten a little bit better, but you still had some bad turnovers here and there. Spencer Rattler with some fumbles, and cleaned up the interceptions a little bit. Pretty clean game last week, but you got to continue to do that and force some turnovers on the defensive side.
Yeah, and if you want to kind of flip a coin here to talk about Missouri's offense against South Carolina's defense, like you said, Missouri's offense has struggled a lot. They went up 17-0 on Vanderbilt last week and kind of put it in park the rest of the game. They needed the defense to pull it out 17-14. They've had trouble finishing drives too. I mean, what got them in that Georgia game was they kicked 5 field goals, including one from a 1st and goal to 1 where they didn't punch it in. Yeah, this does set up well for South Carolina's defense. I think this is a game where a guy like Cam Smith is really kind of relishing it. I don't know if he's going to be matched up with Burden or with Dominic Love. Is it Lovett? Yeah, Dominic Lovett is Missouri's other kind of big receiver. Either way, I think these corners are kind of set up for fun to watch, but also possibly successful one-on-one matchups. And I do think South Carolina can reasonably stop the run. I mean, Missouri's running game is definitely not better than the one they saw the last 2 weeks that they mostly kept under wraps.
Yeah, that's something that Power Mizzou talked to me about on their podcast too, was Darius Rush in particular. And that's someone that I feel like we haven't talked enough about. It's so easy to talk about Cam Smith. He's a future first rounder. I actually saw PFF College rated him the number 1 secondary player today. Like if the draft were to happen today. And yeah, most teams are avoiding him at all costs. I know that he's had some like defensive holding, pass interference issues, whatever. Some of those were real ticky-tacky last week, in my opinion. And more just like the inconsistency, because it felt like they got called against South Carolina, didn't get caught against A&M. But I'm not here to complain about the refs, whatever. So yeah, he's had his struggles with flags, deserved or not. But most teams are avoiding him 9 times out of 10, and that's putting a lot of pressure on Darius Rush. And Darius Rush has stepped up in a major way when teams are attacking him, including that huge interception to kind of get some momentum rolling early in that game, or keep the momentum rolling early in that game last week. I did just want to note that I think he's up to the challenge if they do try to test him again. I'm interested to see, like, I don't know I said this also on that podcast, but I don't know that Missouri's quarterback is necessarily equipped to challenge the safeties. But at some point, you still got two freshman safeties back there. They're playing very well. But at some point, if you play a team that can take some deep shots, which the last 2 weeks has not been the case with backup quarterbacks and all the madness that's been going on there. I think they're probably still going to show some freshman moments before the season's out and get burned a couple more times. So that'll be interesting to see too.
Yeah, that is kind of where this scares you a little bit. You look at, kind of Missouri, you've got Lovett's got a 79-yarder this year. Burden obviously has that huge explosive potential. He's a 5-star. He's got crazy speed. Yeah, this is, especially in a game like this where we expect it to be low scoring. We expect possessions to be limited. Yeah, a deep ball, a coverage bust, whatever, that might be enough to tip things here. If you're talking about a one possession game and one where the South Carolina offense is going to have its share of struggles. And I also kind of think it does, you said it in the start, kind of mirror. South Carolina needs to force Missouri to kind of dink and dunk and go slowly here. And just keep a lid on explosive plays.
Not to go too far off topic here, but there was one particular press conference quote or note this week that I really wanted to hit on, and you talking about the offensive struggles there at the end kind of reminded me again of it. What do we think? Again,
is this
not
a Satterfield thing?
This is a Satterfield thing. South Carolina is probably. Let's pump the brakes. Things could fall apart. Whatever. Probably going to win 7, 8, 9 if you're dreaming games this year, right? Either way, probably going to be noted as an improvement over last year. Can you hold on to this guy that seems to be very, very inconsistent? And the note that I'm talking about in the press conference was someone basically asked, like, how do you get Jaheim Bell the ball more? Because, he's this explosive athlete that is a difference maker and is having a
that's actually not what I thought you were going to say. That's interesting.
Ho-hum season. And Satterfield said basically something like, I would get the ball 1,000 times to him if it was up to me. And I was kind of like, but isn't it up to you? But I don't know. To me, like, I know, like, that's hyper analyzing a silly quote, whatever. But to me, that is kind of like a microcosm of what I think South Carolina fans' frustrations with Satterfield is. It's not that the offense isn't better than last year. It is. Just statistically, look at it, more points per game, all that fun stuff. But there just is so much inconsistency, and there continues to be. And I don't care what the system is. People can complain about the pro style or whatever it is. Maybe it would be more exciting if you're spreading it out. Whatever. Any system can work, but the whole point of offense is the ball in the hands of your best players. At least they have been doing that with Lloyd, although he had to be reminded of that at halftime or whatever against Texas A&M. But I still think you're underutilizing guys like Jaheim Bell, Josh Van. I mean, you're hyper targeting Antoine Wells, and that's worked out pretty well for you. But it still seems like the offense has yet to live up to its potential, and I don't know that we can expect that against this defense this week either.
All right, so that's actually not the Satterfield quote I thought you were going to go to. There's been another one that's been getting a lot of, I don't know what you call it, run, controversy, just talking about whatever. And that was the one where he kind of got asked I'm pulling it up now, but he kind of got asked 2 questions at the same time that were sort of contradictory, and he just answered no. Like, he gave a one-word answer, and everyone's been trying to figure out, which one is he saying no to? Do you know what I'm talking about? As I pull up here,
I missed that. Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
So this was actually right off the top. Someone asked if the first 10 plays change by field position, and then it was like, it was, do they change by field position and do?
So the criticism.
This is bad audio.
You're good. While you're looking for it, the criticism, of course, being that he's like too married to the script, or the worry is that he's too married to the script.
Yeah. I see one part of it. It's basically, it was wondering if It was a question about the script, and then there was another question about if the script changes based on down and distance and where they are on the field. And the reference there is, hey, you had the ball first and goal at the 5 for your first 3 offensive plays, and it seemed like you were calling plays that would have been scripted after a touchback at your own 25.
Which, yeah, I almost mentioned that earlier, too, when you were talking about how the percentages of run to pass in the red zone have shifted more towards run, which has been successful. But that's including
those are the only 2 times the entire game they passed the ball in the red zone were those 2 plays. Every other play in the red zone was a run after that. No, it's basically Satterfield just said no, and people are like, okay, is that a no about his script not changing, or is that a no about him not changing what he does at the 5-yard line or at different parts of the field? And it's been like a Zapruder film. Watch it back, see what he means.
Which that's hilarious. I do think, Satterfield's a smart guy. He knows more about football than me. You don't get to that level unless you do. But I do, last year there was plenty of excuses placed on the fact that you had rotating 4 quarterbacks. I'm not saying Spencer Rattler's been perfect. We've had our own criticisms of him. But at some point, I think you got to stop excusing the struggles on just the quarterback and sort of own it. And South Carolina is winning, so that helps cover it up. And I don't want to focus too much on it because South Carolina is winning. Let's have a happy week. But it does seem like more of the same over the first 7 games of the season, to me at least.
Yeah, and one other Satterfield note, as long as we're talking about his presser, I asked him about the halftime conversation he had with Beamer, and he said, it was one of those things where it was like, hey, don't worry about the plays, just get the ball to the players, as in that's what Beamer told him, which isn't really a bombshell. It's kind of what Beamer said he told him, but it's still interesting to hear it from Satterfield himself.
Yeah, but that goes back to kind of what I was just saying. Like, I don't care so much about his scheme or whatever. It may be beautiful on paper. I'm sure it is. Like, he's a smart guy. But at the end of the day, the point on offense is to get the ball in your best playmaker's hands. And over the course of however many games he's coached now, 20? I'm not seeing that consistently. And the frustrating thing is it seems like even when he does find something, which we saw with Marshawn Lloyd over that 3-game stretch leading into Texas A&M, he still has to be reminded that that's the thing that was working. I don't know, whatever. Not going to get too far down that rabbit hole. We'll see. Maybe they score 40 on Saturday, and then I'll shut up.
Boy, putting up 40 on this Missouri defense, that'd be something. That would give us a lot to talk about when we're back here Sunday.
All right. Let's kind of transition to putting your money where your mouth is. What's your prediction here? What do you think is going to happen?
All right. I've got a score prediction in that you guys can see either tomorrow or Saturday. It is 20-16 South Carolina. Again, I think low scoring. I think ugly. I think you're going to get turnovers on both sides, which I know people don't want to hear, and Beamer's kind of talked about too. But I do think the Missouri defense is probably too good, and this offense is too turnover prone for that not to happen. It's going to be ugly. Just prepare yourself. This is not going to look good. If you're either team, but really if you're a South Carolina fan, that's our audience. This is not going to look fun. You're not going to have a good time. But I do think South Carolina is going to find a way to win this game.
Yeah, so that would have them pushing the current spread, which is at 4, to open at 5.
I guess I got to make a decision then for my weekly picks.
I also have a push right now. I have them 17-13, so even uglier. Yeah, I mean, I see this being a fourth quarter game away, and there's going to be some fingernail biting, I think, in this one. Pretty much about. Maybe they get off to another fast start in front of a home crowd and can just ride that momentum wave.
Well,
it's also kind of hard to
though.
tell. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just you're not going to score in the first 15 seconds every week. You're just not. So at what point do you actually have to get into a football game like without that positive game script and see how things go?
Yeah, I mean, you can't discount it, but like South
Come
Carolina
on.
scored 17 points with 17 of their 31 or 30 points
30,
last
yeah.
week.
In the first 5.5 minutes.
In the first 5.5 minutes, and it's a kickoff return for a touchdown, so offense has nothing to do with that one. A interception returned down to the 5 that the offense gets 0 yards on, but you get a field goal out of, and a fumble return that the offense drove 25
It was
yards
19 yards. Yeah.
So good job punching it in there, but still 19-yard drive. Other than that, you scored 13 points with like legitimate drives. Now also that takes your offense off the field whenever you do all of that, and there's things to consider and all of that. But let's not even though the points per game have gone up this season, and I'm back on the offense again. But even though the points per game have gone up this season, if you like look at the way that these games have gone, it's kind of misleading a little bit. Anyway,
So you're saying a win?
Not 17-13. I'm saying a win. South Carolina's going to win, but 17-13, nail biter, not going to be fun. You're saying a win too, 20-16.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, like I said, South Carolina fans have been in this position several times where you get this momentum going. South Carolina's ranked for the first time since 2018. You have this huge opportunity. It's homecoming. You're at home. And in the past, sometimes you've fallen on your face. So I think a lot of this might be stemming from that anxiety. And if you come out and play a complete game and beat them by 20 points, some of those demons will be exercised. Either way, though, you get a win here. You got to feel happy going into Nashville.
Vanderbilt. Yep. For sure. And again, at that point, I know it's not the goal for this team. Beamer made a point about how he would hate for the last 2 weeks to be the high point, which he's correct. If you are South Carolina, you don't want beating A&M for the first time to be your ceiling for the season, but that's bowl eligible. And that was in question before the year. We weren't sure if they'd get to 6, and now you'd be at 6 with a month to spare. You got a chance to go higher. That gets you to a bowl game if next time you win, and that could be Saturday.
Definitely. Quick transition to our national conversation. Does Texas A&M make a bowl? They are having a bit of a rough week after losing to South Carolina. So apparently, allegedly, I can't remember who reported this, and I haven't fact checked it. So if this is just internet rumor, my bad. But some of the players were smoking weed before the game in the locker room, and they got suspended. And then a couple other players are transferring, including the punter. There's definitely bad vibes around the Aggies program right now. And, I listen to a lot of like national analysts and podcasts or whatever, like praising this giant number one of all time recruiting class. You had Saban talking about how they were basically buying players. Allegedly, whatever. And I do wonder in this NIL era, because some teams are just going to be able to, write whatever paycheck they want and get 5 stars across the board or whatever. But I do wonder, from a personality standpoint, the players that are just looking for the highest bidder, when things start to go south, are they also going to be the ones that start to look elsewhere? Is there going to, are we going to have a big transfer storm out of Texas A&M after this year if things continue to struggle? And is that something that we're going to see? And then maybe, I don't know, do people start to reassess their NIL strategy from there? Maybe it's not just about the money.
The only thing I'd say about that is coaches have been doing that for 100 years. They just jump when things go south. That's how Jimbo Fisher got to A&M. He jumped when things started tailing in Tallahassee, just before they could fire him. And A&M gave him, wow, that's a lot of money. Every time I look at it, $95 million.
But you're seeing some of the same struggles, right? The offensive line is dead.
No, he's Gene Chizik. He's Chizik. He caught 1 year lightning in a bottle. His Cam Newton was Jameis Winston for a year. And you're seeing this is what it looked like if Auburn had kept Gene Chizik around for 10 years.
And locked themselves in, because it's going to be tough for. I mean, I know A&M's got money, but at least give them another year or two, right, before you
Yeah, I
even
think you have
start
to.
think
I mean,
paying that buyout.
I think you have to. I mean, they're 3-4 right now. They're getting back to your original point. They are playing Ole Miss Saturday night.
At home.
They got to win. Yeah, in College Station, they got to win 3 out of their last 5 to make a bowl. They do still have UMass. You pick up a win there. You're basically talking about splitting against Ole Miss, Florida, Auburn, and LSU, which they can. They're talented enough to split those 4 games.
Yeah,
but are they
have to
going to
think that they
do
can
that?
win 2 of those 4? But oof, yeah, I mean, they could also lose all 4 of those games.
They do catch 3 out of those 4 at home. The only road game in that stretch is at Auburn. But also, would you be surprised if Auburn weirdly punched up for a week and beat them at home?
No, I won't be surprised if Auburn wins this week at home.
Yeah, that's true too. We got that on our picks card too. Auburn and Arkansas. Do we have that on the card? I think we did.
I don't know, but on paper that seems like one that Arkansas should win. Although, is KJ Jefferson back? I'm not even sure.
Is.
Okay, so that seems like one that Arkansas should win, but weird things happen to Jordan Hare, and so they haven't quit. That's one thing that you can give Brian Arson credit for. Like, Auburn keeps showing up and playing. All right, let's go through some national games. I did want to hit on that Texas A&M thing. It's funny because South Carolina, especially in sort of downish years, does have a history of getting coaches fired. Now, it doesn't sound like Jimbo's going to get fired or anything, but it definitely seems like they started a little bit of a downward spiral. We'll see if they can stop it this weekend. But I remember back, I mean, South Carolina got Will Muschamp fired on like their 7-5 2014 year, whatever.
Yeah, Will
was.
Muschamp fired a couple times.
But yeah, that's fair. And I believe they got Phil Fulmer fired. Like they have this history of like teams expecting to beat South Carolina and then not, and the wheels fall off. All right, let's look at some of these national games. So you got Ohio State, Penn State as the highest ranked matchup of the weekend. Ohio State currently, I have them minus 15.5, and that line has moved in Ohio State's direction because I think it was like 14.5 this morning when I looked. What are you thinking on that one? It's at Penn State, so
I'm not talking myself into big game Penn State. They went to Michigan. They got flattened. That game wasn't even as close as the score because they had a defensive touchdown in there on kind of a weird play. I think Ohio State's the best team in the country. I know they're ranked 2 right now. I know people sometimes don't take things outside the SEC seriously, but I think that's the most complete team in the country. I think they're going to go there and pop Penn State.
I do have Ohio State winning.
It is a lot of points.
It's a lot of points. I feel like Penn State isn't as bad as they played against Michigan. I think I'm going to pick them to cover, but Ohio State to win. It's at home. It's early, sleepy game. Maybe Ohio State takes a second to wake up. I'm going to go with Ohio State, but Penn State plus the points. You got Notre Dame at Syracuse. I don't know if that's one of our picks, but I'm just kind of intrigued on how Syracuse is going to bounce back after that tough win against Clemson, where let's be honest, they blew it. Sat on the ball too much, whatever.
Give the ball to Sean Tucker. They should win. I said it last week. If they do it this week, they should beat Notre Dame. That's kind of we're not a Syracuse podcast. We don't have to litigate their play calling, but give the ball to Tucker more. Yeah.
So they're currently minus 2.5. I think I would pick them to cover.
I think I did too.
At home. Oklahoma, Iowa State. It's kind of interesting. So you got 4-3 Oklahoma versus 3-4 Iowa State at Iowa State. Oklahoma currently favored by 1, so basically a pick 'em.
Was that even on our sheet? I don't remember.
It might not be. I'm just looking at the ones that I'm most interested in. I haven't picked mine for the sheet yet.
I feel like Iowa State's got to win a close game eventually. They've had so many one-score losses. Yeah, I'll say Iowa State. That feels like a go either way, and I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I think I'm taking Oklahoma because I just can't believe that they're actually as bad as they've been showing. I feel like at some point they're going to piece it together. There's too much talent on that team, but maybe they are. All right, here's a fun one, I think. mostly just from a point spread perspective. Obviously, everyone's going to pick Georgia, but you got the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, which I just learned is not called that anymore.
Yes, it is. You can call it whatever you want.
Well, yeah,
you're not supposed to call it that, but
we can call it that. But apparently, they're like they were trying to dissociate themselves from the alcohol connotation, which I'm like, it's college football. You'll be all right.
It's Jacksonville. I mean, anybody who's ever been to that game knows what that looks like.
Yeah, everyone stay safe out there, but it's the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. Anyway, Georgia is favored by 22.5. That's a lot of points.
That's too many. I picked Florida to cover on the sheet.
I picked Florida to cover. Man, it would be really fun and chaotic if Florida somehow uglied up this game and got the win. Same way I feel about Tennessee and Kentucky. I wish Florida and Kentucky would win just to make the chaos of the SEC East reign and make us start to look into all these tiebreaker scenarios and all that fun stuff. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think both Tennessee and Georgia are going to win, but I also think probably both don't cover. So the Tennessee line right now is -12 at home versus Kentucky, but they have Georgia next week. This feels like a look ahead spot to me.
Yeah, I think I ended up picking Tennessee to cover, Georgia not to cover. That could be a late cover. I think they could win that game like 38-24, but the last touchdown comes with 2 minutes left to put the game away. Yeah, I'm interested to see if Chris Rodriguez can keep the pace slow, can keep Kentucky winning the time of possession battle, keep that Tennessee offense off the field, and then to see what Kentucky's defense can do. If anybody can do anything with Tennessee's defense, we still haven't seen it.
Well, yeah, that's the strategy, right? Like Alabama tried to play Tennessee's game, and they ultimately lost, but they just were like, all right, we're getting in a shootout. Let's go.
Well, they have Bryce Young. You can do that.
You have the former Heisman winner. So, yeah, you should do that. But I think everyone else's strategy, including Kentucky's this week, is try your best to hold on for dear life on defense and hold the ball as much as you can in the run game. So, yeah, that'll be interesting. We got H-Man on YouTube. He says Georgia will get up for this game, just too much for Florida to handle. I might have missed that whenever
there's definitely a scenario there where Georgia's defense just comes out and eats them, and they just sit on this game like 35-10, and they cover that 22.5. I could see that.
I know. Yeah. I mean, it felt like Georgia kind of hit that little middle of the season lull where they were playing down a little bit. Maybe this is their bounce back. Like, all right.
But you said look ahead for Tennessee. I don't think it is as much for Georgia because it's hard to look past this game. This game means a lot to that program. But, yeah.
I mean, it's definitely the biggest defensive test that they will – Tennessee meaning. So, yeah, maybe they are thinking a little bit ahead of that one. I hope they're both fun games because this week kind of sucks. I mean, on paper it kind of sucks. But in years past, those weeks that are – seemingly boring.
It's a Saturday of college football. I'm not complaining.
No, yeah, and honestly, I feel like the most chaos reigns whenever we think that it's going to be a boring week. Looking at some other ranked matchups, you got number 16 Illinois at Nebraska. Illinois favored by 7.5. That feels low to me.
Ride the Perry McCarty train for as long as I can. Yeah,
Illinois might win that division.
They should at this point. I don't know. Yeah. Like they're undefeated in conference. Or they're 3-1. They lost. I forgot they lost to Indiana. Yeah, why not? Let's go with Burt.
You got another ranked matchup with Oklahoma State and K-State. K-State favored by 1.5 at home.
I picked K-State, but I haven't looked at the status of Adrian Martinez, and I probably should have done that because I know he got hurt in that game against TCU last week. Kansas State was blocking TCU out before he got hurt.
Last I heard, he's very questionable, but the backup who also came in against TCU and looked pretty good until he got knocked out is set to play. So I do think they'll still get some stuff done on offense.
I think Kansas State wins that game then if they're healthy at quarterback.
That's pretty much all I had on my list. You got Michigan State, but that feels like an afterthought. I don't know. Squirrely things have happened in that game.
Northwestern Iowa over-under opened at 31.5.
31.5? No way.
That's where it opened. It's at like 37 now, but that's where it was the longest opening number in the history of like since they started recording over-unders.
Yeah, you have to smash that over. That's like 17 to 15 game.
Do you have to though? With Iowa and Northwestern's off, do you?
I mean, I get it, but like,
just saying,
you can't. Neither team's going to get to 20. I don't know. Maybe not.
I don't know. We're not going to actually talk about that. Yeah, it's happened before. Did you want to hit some basketball stuff, some men's basketball before we get out of here?
Yeah, definitely. So, as I mentioned at the top of the show, when we were talking recruiting and Cam Scott, yesterday, South Carolina had its official tip off for the season with the Garnet and Black Madness, which is the first annual, right? Garnet and Black Madness, as far as I know. So a new thing that Lamont Paris and staff and the athletic department is trying to do. What was the crowd? It was open to the public, right? What was the crowd like?
It was. I'm not going to try to put a number on it. They kind of shepherded everybody into 3 sections on one side, like the 3 sections around center court on the side away from the scorers table. So I think those sections were close to full. I don't know how many people 3 sections seat. Plus, there was behind one of the baselines, there was some banquet for the Gamecock Club with the boosters and all that, and so a few hundred. I don't know if it got to 1,000, but there were 3 sections mostly full and some people wearing nice suits and dresses behind the baseline.
Cool. I saw you posted the stat line. It sounded like Michi Johnson had a good game in the scrimmage, and we kind of both talked about how that's going to be essential if South Carolina is going to surprise people. If those of you that missed it at SEC Media Days last week, the media picked them to finish last in the SEC, so 14th. But yeah, if they're going to somehow, exceed those expectations, I think that starts with obviously GG Jackson playing well. But even if he plays well, he can't do it by himself. Having Michi Johnson, who it sounds like he was creating his own shot as well as playing the point pretty well, that's going to be essential.
Yeah. So last night, if those of you missed the updates, or I got some takeaways coming on the website soon, they played a 20-minute running clock scrimmage, which ended up being 15 minutes of basketball with a couple timeouts and fouls in there. And then they did a 3-point contest and a dunk contest. The 15, 20-minute basketball, whatever. I don't know what you take from it. It was pretty much almost no contact, but Michi Johnson did lead all scorers. He had 11. He was hit 3 threes. He was kind of stepping into it. We got Lamont for, 5-6 minutes after it. He was talking about how Michi Johnson is a true point guard. Not everybody in 2022 who's listed as a point guard kind of has those traits beyond just bringing the ball up the court, but he facilitates the offense. He can step into shots. He can create shots. He gets others involved. I was pretty impressed with him last night. That was probably my biggest takeaway from whatever you could.
A couple weeks ago, we talked about how he was a former 4-star, went to Ohio State, and a lot of his game was based around the fact that he was this explosive athlete, and then he got injured. And it's possible that he's over that injury and has that explosiveness back. I mean, he was one of the guys that was featured in the dunk contest. That's a pretty good sign that he's got most of his explosiveness back. He finished second, right? I don't know. Yeah,
GG Jackson won that. That was fun. He's got some good moves. It's GG Jackson. Of course, you're going to get some good stuff there. It was a good event. It was a nice chill. I got videos on my Twitter, by the way, and I think you retweeted them too with the official account. But Alan _Cole, I've got videos of most of the dunks from last night.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Definitely go check those out. I know GG Jackson did a between the legs, one-handed sort of dunk.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Really cool.
It was a fun little energy thing. It was good to get out there and see people. And they're exhibitioning against Mars Hill next Wednesday, which I believe is also open to the public.
Right. And so, we'll at Gamecock Scoop keep you updated on that. We are going to have some crazy weeks coming up here as basketball going, because you're the only person that's in Colombia. I'll have some coverage from my couch as always too. And we'll make sure that all of those games are covered in full. I also know you went to one of the baseball scrimmages this week. Any short takeaways from that?
Not really. They played pretty quick. I know they're going again this weekend, and I think their fall World Series, whatever, is next week. Not a whole lot there. I've kind of seen what I need to see there with fall, but once they tell us I'm still hoping we're going to hear from Kingston before fall's over, but we'll see.
Yeah, and of course, we're still waiting to hear how serious that Roman Kimball injury was that you mentioned a couple weeks ago, where he just left the mound with
In
the
the
trainer,
scrimmage, yeah.
but non-contact, all that sort of stuff. So we'll see how that went. And then there was a pitcher you were excited about, freshman pitcher.
Jerzenbeck, yeah, he was the highest rated recruit who got to campus. His off-speed stuff looked really good. That was last week. I was thinking of the scrimmage this week. Yeah, he pitched 3 innings last week. Got all 9 batters he faced out. I think 4 strikeouts.
You froze up there for a second, but yeah, that's really exciting. I mean, that's something that they're going to have to depend on. They had a ton of injuries at pitcher last year, obviously. And they're going to need that. And, they've struggled over the past couple of years offensively. So as much defensive help as you can get is going to be, and hoping that you get some improvement on the offensive side. Oh, hey, you're back. You froze for a second.
Great. I think that about covers everything in Gamecock land this week. I think we're good here.
Yeah. All right. So we will have all of your coverage leading up to the game on GamecockScoop.com in the next coming days. Like I said, I'll also have some more recruiting information for you tomorrow. And then on Saturday at 4 p.m., if you are watching from home, hop on over to GamecockScoop.com. Alan and I will be in the live thread giving our thoughts and observations, and we'll have some follow-up after that. We'll be back here on Sunday to talk post-game and hopefully a win, even though it may be as ugly as we said. See you later, Gamecocks.